Welcome to Campo and Joe. We're ready to fire up another podcast. Appreciate y'all tuning into the YouTube channel, to Facebook Live, to wherever you come and check out what's happening on 1010XL. Joe C. from XL Primetime, noon to 3 Monday through Friday, and my man Dave Campo. This is a Super Bowl guy. You should have worn your ring this week because we got the Super Bowl.
It's Super Bowl week.
But you have flashed that Super Bowl ring before.
I could have flashed that around. I could have flashed 3 of them around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know a little something about the Super Bowl. So we say, hey, we're going to talk about the Jags. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl a little bit because you probably got a good memory or two that we can share with the fans. But let's start, as we do, dedicate Campo and Joe to the Jaguars, all things Jaguars. Let's start with your impression of Doug Pederson. We'll throw a couple of ideas to the fans out there as far as what we got out of the press conference. But take us, you and I basically like the idea of Doug Pederson coming in here. Take us back to last Friday after we did our last podcast when this news broke that he's going to be the guy.
Well, I'm excited from the standpoint that I really felt that, the 2 candidates, Caldwell and Doug, were the 2 guys that had experience. And I felt that this program has to start from ground level. And especially if they were going to keep Trent Baalke here, there had to be someone come in here that's dealt with GMs and understands, and it probably asked the questions of how much power he was going to have and those kind of things and was comfortable with it. And the thing that excites me about Doug Pederson is, he's got a track record. He's done it. He's a backup quarterback in the league. Actually, was a starter for a few games. Yeah. So he's done it all. He's been the 3rd string quarterback, 2nd string. So his association with Trevor Lawrence, who in my opinion is the key that opens the vault, and then everything else has to come out of the vault. But I think he is the guy that can get that done, and I'm excited about the fact that he's excited about being here, and I think he's a good guy. He's an organizer, and I think that's really important at this particular time with this franchise.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the things that you and I kind of married up when all this, kind of started to unfold, and we knew that they were going to be looking for another head coach. When you started to hear the candidates, you couldn't help but say, okay. And we both fully admit this. I feel like we have to admit it all the time. We liked Urban Meyer. We liked the idea of what Herb could bring. We felt like, or I at least felt like, that he would have a CEO approach. He would come in, he'd take a look. Okay, what's good here? What's not good here? What do we need to change? Well, none of that happened, unfortunately. We didn't get the Herb that we thought we were looking forward to having. This guy has done it from the top at a high level. He has a plan. He's been successful with the plan, and he comes at it with offensive eyes and a certain level of energy. And I think the other part of it, Coach, is that he comes out of that Philadelphia Eagles job where he was successful, and now the second go-around, he probably has some thoughts on how he might even tweak things a little bit and do things a little bit better this time.
I don't think there's any question the second time around, you're probably better than the first. I think I would have been better if I'd have had another opportunity.
Right.
But and also one of the things that impressed me about him from the beginning was, the thing that hurt Urban, in my opinion, although I didn't think he handled things very well, but one of the things that hurt him, in my opinion, was he didn't know the staff that he was bringing in, number one, and it took him a long time to put it together. This guy knows the guys that have done it before, and he's been in the room with them as a player, as a coach, in the league, and he's already got his staff rolling, and it'll be, I would say, by the end of the week he'll have a full staff and ready to roll. So, he brings that to the table as well.
I think that's a huge up because, and you probably can give people an idea of when you are in this NFL and you cross paths with a lot of different guys, you either have relationships from either one staff or, in Doug Pederson's case, going back to his playing days, and the synergy of a coaching staff that are familiar with one another, knows what strengths that you can pull out of one guy. Give us an idea of how that can be a major, major plus here.
Well, I can only go back to when we came to the Cowboys in 1989. Coach Johnson brought 6 of us from the University of Miami. And a couple of guys that he held over only lasted 1 or 2 years. The 6 that he brought from Miami went through the entire deal. And a lot of that was based on the fact we knew him, he knew us. Right. He knew, we knew exactly what his mentality was, what the scheme was. We brought our scheme from the University of Miami, and then we tweaked it from there. All of those things. I really think I underestimated when I was champion Urban Meyer, the fact, that I really felt that Urban had a lot of the qualities that Jimmy had as far as the CEO part.
Right.
Both psychology guys, supposedly, know your players, those kind of things. But I didn't take into consideration, having that package. I can promise you, we watched as a staff, wives and the whole works, we watched the Cotton Bowl when the University of Miami was playing in the Cotton Bowl for the national championship in 1989. And we were still in our season, and you would have thought we were in that game. That was so much excitement and everything. Right. And we were, I think, probably 1-12 or 13 at that time.
Yeah.
So, that kind of camaraderie that we had on the coaching staff, it was a party.
Yeah.
And we knew we were going to win. It was just a question of time, and it just worked out.
Yeah.
So I think that synergy is really important. And I think it's important, though, also that Doug knows what these guys that he's hiring have done, and what they've done in the league.
So before we talk about, the reports are Mike Caldwell, inside linebackers coach for the Tampa Bay Bucks, is going to be the defensive coordinator. Mike McCoy is going to be the quarterbacks coach. But before we touch on those, go back to the plan that Doug Pederson plans to put together here. And then maybe go back to the press conference a little bit, Coach, because it does seem like you immediately identified what could be a major concern with a first-time head coach, a young head coach, working with maybe a powerful figure in the front office. Doug Pederson, I thought he said some key things at the press conference as far as having his own plan and being able to work with the general manager and putting this bad boy together.
Well, and again, I think that's part of his strength. I think he has a pretty good thought process as far as what he wants to get done. And I'm sure he made that very clear to Shad Khan and to Trent Baalke, as far as, I want to have the ability to do certain things. I don't necessarily need to have this particular power,
right?
But I've got to these powers. And I'm sure he made that very clear. And he came out and said right away, you build a team with the trenches, and here we go. So he knows in his mind what it takes to be successful at this level. And that's what I think jumps him ahead in some ways.
Andy Reid disciple, successful on his own, all those things are going to be huge pluses. The one thing that, I'm just trying to put all this together, listening to the words and then trying to kind of peel back maybe one layer of the onion and figuring out exactly what it all means. But he said he wants to build it through the trenches. That's basically telling you that he wants to see that offensive line at its best. And he believes the only way Trevor's going to be at his best is if he has that offensive line protecting him. And you know what that said to me, Coach? That said to me he is going to have a significant say on the personnel decisions.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be a working relationship. And his personality is a lot different than Urban's as far as dealing with someone that has the same kind of position. For example, if both of them have the same say going into the draft, he's going to have the personality to be able to mix and match and juggle a little bit more. And I think that's a plus in this situation, going forward. And for him, he also said, hey, I kind of like this structure of the 3-4 defense. He's looked at it.
Right.
He's taken the time to look at this roster. He knows the roster as well as Trent Baalke does. I can promise you, during this last month, he's looked at every player. He knows the structure of what's going on here and how he might change it going forward, not just with players, but his vision.
Yeah, and we're going to find out as far as free agency is concerned. There's a handful of weeks they're really going to have to drill down on who they like here, who has expiring contracts. DJ Chark's already come out on social media saying he's ready to get paid. We'll find out what happens there. The negative for DJ Chark is he's coming off of an ACL tear, which is really, really tough for a guy to go get his market value. But let's stay on the coaching staff for right now. What do you know about Mike McDowell, and Mike McCoy, or Mike Caldwell.
Mike Caldwell, yeah.
Mike Caldwell. There's too many Mikes and too many.
Well, Bubba McDowell, who played for me and played for Houston, just got the job at Prairie View over in the head coaching job. So you must have been thinking about one of my ex-Miami guys.
Keep me straight, Coach. So Mike Caldwell, I think I was just afraid to say the name Caldwell around here in Duval.
It is, yeah.
But what do you know about him? And let's talk about him before we get to Mike McCoy.
Well, first of all, with Mike Caldwell, I don't know him that well, but I do know I knew him as a player.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we coached against him. He was a player in '93.
Right.
You know, he played up for quite a while in the league. Played for Philadelphia. He's got a little bit of, he's got great energy, and that's the other thing that Doug Pederson said in the press conference was, I'm looking for coaches that can teach and can bring energy to the table, and he has that. He's got the Singletary, a little bit of Singletary in him.
I like that comparison. Expand on that just a little bit, because I think that's a key gene if you're an NFL guy.
Yeah, he loves the game. He played with that kind of energy, and he obviously he's demonstrated that if that's who Doug Pederson's looking for, and he's the guy that he brings in. And I know Todd Bowles very well. You know, he worked with Todd at the Buccaneers as a linebacker coach, and Todd has told me that the guy has a tremendous amount of energy, and he's smart, and he can teach.
He was also an assistant head coach and coached positionally up in New York with Todd Bowles.
Correct.
And so that means he's got I would think, a lot of good influence from Todd Bowles, but he also learned under Bill Belichick and Nick Saban way back in the day.
Right. That's way back, though.
Yeah.
But I think every time you're with somebody, something rubs off. And, I think all three of those guys, obviously Belichick and Saban, but Todd Bowles is one of the best defensive coaches in the league, in my opinion, other than that last signal call he made in the playoff.
The zero
game.
blitz, yeah.
I think he lost his mind going into that one, and Todd would probably say the same thing at this point. But, I worked with Todd at Cleveland. He was when I was a coordinator, he was the secondary coach, along with oh my goodness, I'm losing my mind. Ex-Chicago head coach.
Lovey. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Todd Bowles is an outstanding defensive coach, and he's learned some things from him as well, I'm sure.
So I do think that you have to have good relationships. You have to have guys you like and guys you trust. And like you said, energy guy and also a good scheme guy that he can coach it up. We're likely to see a 3-4 based on what Doug Pederson told Hayes Carline. You can catch that on 1010XL.com as well, because he said that's basically already been at least hatched here this past season under Joe Cullen. There's a lot of personnel decisions that were made to fit the 3-4. So you can imagine that Caldwell's going to come in here and be asked to keep that going.
Yeah, and there's a lot of similarities. You've heard me say that the fronts, they just have one guy standing up that would be down if it was a 3-4, but they're still running the basic fronts off of it. And the linebacker positions are a little bit different. I thought Hayes made a great comment on the show earlier when he said that it's a spread game now.
Yeah.
So the more speed you have on the field, which more linebackers you have out there, the more speed you've got on the field.
Yeah.
I think that's a definite factor. And, again, I think not only last year, what they've kind of worked towards, but during the season, the scouts were all looking for players, not knowing that there was going to be a change. They're still looking at players with that in mind when they're putting their grades down. Does this guy fit this mold? Does he fit that mold? So I think the first year you go in and you do what you can to try to maximize that and see what happens.
Now, you used to be an assistant on the Jaguars staff. Whenever Mike Caldwell comes to town, will you at least say hello to him and just remind him to defend the pick play? Will you make sure that you point that out to him compared to what we had last year?
Well, one of the guys I think he might bring with him is Tim Houck, who played in the league and coached the safeties with him at Philadelphia. He really good player, good safety in the league. I think he knows how to play a bunch route. it goes back to if you play against the Pittsburgh Steelers for a long time, you'll learn how to play the bunch route because they started it years ago.
Yeah, you better. And I'm looking forward to a little more organization, little better streamlined coaching, getting to the desired result a hell of a lot faster than this last staff did. Mike McCoy on the offensive side. Now, as we do this podcast, there's going to be more names that are going to be coming in. I love that you just mentioned one of the staff members that potentially could be on the defensive side. But the point was made about Mike McCoy coming in as a quarterback's coach. Trevor hasn't had a guy that could fully devote his craft as a coach, coaching specifically quarterbacks in his 5 years, either playing at Clemson or heading into year number 2 in Jacksonville.
Yeah, he's had some coordinators, and even this past group, there were 2 coordinators.
Yeah.
I think having a hands-on guy that can teach fundamentals and that type of thing. There was some mention that, he's been out of coaching for 3 years. I think I could go into a defensive backfield in the NFL right now and coach fundamentals.
Right.
Maybe the spread game is a little bit different as far as scheme, but the fundamentals, having a quarterback guy like Doug Pederson and a quarterback guy like Mike McCoy, that's just helps the development of the quarterback for sure.
Yeah, I like that idea because, Trevor needs direction. He, you can come up with this bobblehead, I don't know, is this Derrick Henry? His head never stopped spinning last year because of, the speed of the game, the level of talent that he was facing, the level of talent around him that he had to work with. All those things were not 100% negative, but certainly weren't ideal compared to what he had before. And then the coaching probably had his head spinning a little bit. This is going to be a huge plus.
This is new for him, and I think he made the comment after Coach Pederson talked to him about the fact that he kind of sees things through a quarterback's eyes.
Yeah.
And it's different. I don't think the linebacker coach necessarily had to play linebacker, DB coach, but the quarterback is a different animal. He sees the entire picture, and he has to understand what he's looking at and what he's doing, more so than any other position. And I think having a couple of quarterback guys is really going to make a difference.
I think it's a real important point. And the other thing that I think we heard from people that covered Doug Pederson, people that were talking about him coming back in, I'll reference Mike Garafolo from the NFL Network, who, when he was on XL Primetime, he pointed out that if Doug, and this was a week before he gets the job, he pointed out that one thing that Pederson would like to do better in this next head coaching job is that he felt like he kind of forgot about developing the quarterback on a day-to-day basis and working with Carson Wentz, and probably would have liked to have, if chance to go back, would have done a bit better job at the end. That's going to help Trevor.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, again, bringing in somebody that he knows, he feels comfortable with, it's going to be with him on a daily basis. I think Doug will be pretty hands-on with both of them.
Yeah. Now, you were one of the guys that said, and I as soon as you said it, I'm like, what an important point. The late start with finally deciding on who the head coach was going to be here puts Doug Pederson kind of behind the 8 ball in terms of getting his staff together. It sounds like he already has a plan. You already touched on the fact that he was ready to roll and he already has hired a couple guys. Can he overcome that?
Yeah, I think so. I really think that he has a little bit of an advantage having been in the league. He's worked with these guys. He's seen firsthand how they teach and how they approach players. And that's the advantage that he has over Urban, and that's a big advantage. I would be willing to bet that he had his staff mapped out, pretty much put together while he was waiting to see if he was going to get the job.
I believe it. I agree with that. Now, we talked last week. It would have been nice if you could get a Mike Kafka, if there was a relationship from those two guys being on Andy Reid's staff in Kansas City. Would have been nice, but Kafka ends up going up to join Brian Dable in New York, and you're going to lose out on a couple of these guys. Pep Hamilton was considered one of the guys that he might be looking at. It looks like he's going to stay where he's at. But let's hit some of these other coaching hires, guys that where does Doug Pederson rank in these coaching hires? Nate Hackett out in Denver, Matt Eberflus in Chicago, Brian Dable up in New York. The decision was made to go with Dennis Allen in New Orleans, Lovey in Houston, Mike McDaniel, which is an interesting young lad, never played the game, but he knows how to draw it up, and they're bringing him down to Miami to save Tua. I'm missing somebody. How do you think the overall coaching hires went this offseason, and where would you put Doug Pederson?
Well, the league right now looks like it's an offensive league.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's really what it's kind of turned into.
Josh McDaniels, I forgot.
Yeah, and when you look at a guy like Josh McDaniel, I felt that scheme-wise, he was somebody we would have loved to have had here necessarily because I think that scheme is outstanding, and he's been with a number one guy in Belichick.
Yeah.
Lovie Smith, even though he's a defensive guy, he's done it. You know, and to me, I'm old school. I'd like to have the guy that has done it. Yeah. And I think Houston did a great job, especially since he was there already.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he does know the personnel. He does know the problems at that point.
And just like this place needs a little culture rebuild, they need it there too.
Correct. And, you know, he's been very successful at it. Then you look at Eberflus, another defensive guy. I know him very well. He's smart and competitive, and he didn't waste any time getting his staff together either. He had in his mind what his plan was going to be and how he was going to implement it. So, you know, I think those guys are very good. The young guys, Joe, we don't know how any of these guys are going to do, whether they're young, old, or whatever, but I like the experience level, and I think Doug's a good hire.
Like, say, the Minnesota Vikings, they're going to hire Kevin O'Connell. That's basically understood after the Super Bowl. So you got Sean McVay that now is taking a team to a Super Bowl for the second time in his young career. Think of how young he was when he first went out to L.A.
Right.
Then he loses Zach Taylor, and Zach Taylor, lo and behold, in 3 years' time, has got his team in the Super Bowl. And you've got an opportunity, another hot assistant from McVay, to go up to Minnesota and maybe do some of the same stuff. I don't blame any ownership or team in trying to follow. It's a copycat league, trying to follow that model and say, wow, whoever he's learning from. And by the way, Sean McVay learned from Kyle Shanahan. So I don't mind going to that tree. We'll find out whether they're successful or not.
Well, I think there's something to trees. But at the same time, you know, the Belichick tree is not done very well.
True.
So it's really about that person, how he interviewed, you know, what he's got to offer, what his plan is. Does it fit with the owners? Does it fit with all those things? And that's why you see guys going to different places, you know. And not necessarily being interviewed by any of the other people. True. You know, this guy fits us, and that's it.
Yeah, and they made that decision. I want you to throw a Super Bowl memory at us if you can before we're done. But let's do that front office discussion that when we come through that press conference on Saturday with Shad Khan at the podium, Trent Baalke at the podium, Doug Pederson. Some tough questions were asked. Don't know that we got all the 100% of the answer that we were looking for, but back to what you said, you think an experienced head coach can handle that front office. Do you think, based on what you heard, that there will be changes in the front office, and what kind of changes?
Yes, I believe there will be, and I think a lot of it was based on the fact that all the interviewees, he said it himself, he was information gathering about other programs,
how they work,
teams, and I think it will be kind of another person in that building, whether it's a executive vice president.
Right.
They tried to do it with Coughlin. He wanted to coach. That's the problem.
It's true.
I don't think a guy like Spieler wants to coach. He wants to be involved in draft and free agency and that type of thing. It's just another set of eyes. And it also gives a set of eyes to the owner. He's not a hands-on owner.
No,
Shad
it's true.
is not going to be in the building. He needs somebody in the building that can kind of give him an idea what's going on, and I think that will work out. And whether it's in another assistant GM under Baalke, you know, I think that's going to be a little bit of a ranking system there.
I still want to maintain my idea. I think we might share this, but that he can still conduct interviews, fulfill the minority requirements, maybe look at another possible candidate, but it could be a president of football operations.
Right.
President of business is Mark Lamping, president of football operations. It could be the EVP or whatever. And for my money, that's overseeing everything that's football, which means he would be above Balky, even though it wouldn't necessarily.
I don't think Spielman would come in here. I think Frank Frangie made the comment on his show the other day that he talked to somebody and said that Balky was making a decision on who was going to be under him. I don't think Spielman's under him.
I don't think so either.
You know, after 8 years as a GM in the league and pretty successful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's going to be, there's going to be a guy in there that's overseeing everything.
All right. Super Bowl memories. What's, I mean, there had to be some really good ones. What were some of the things that popped for you with the Dallas Cowboys winning Super Bowls? Well,
one that sticks out is that in the first ball game against the Buffalo Bills, we worked two teams, offensive teams going against our defense because of the no huddle. And they were big no huddle, and not a lot of people were. So all week going into it, we worked that situation. But Ray Horton, one of our DBs, was on the sideline standing next to me. We were in our goal line defense. They had scored in first in the ball game, and they were getting ready to score again. And they're on the 2-yard line, 4th down, and they went for it.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray is standing next to me, and I signaled the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray's looking across at their signal caller. And he reads the guy's lips, and he says, they're going to throw it. So we went nickel. And they're on the goal line.
Yeah.
And Thomas Everett intercepted the ball.
Yeah.
Thomas Everett intercepted the ball in the end zone.
Nice.
And so, that stuck out to me. Here's this DB that was, and he was the guy going in, with the package. But he said, Coach, they're going to throw it. They're going to throw it.
Beautiful.
And that's, that was great.
I mean, those are instant little moments that make history.
Well, it was like in the interception.
Mm-hmm. The Malcolm Butler interception against
Malcolm Butler, exactly. Yeah. They had seen it in practice, and they did it.
Yeah.
So, that stuck out. The other thing that stuck out to me was when we went into the games against the Steelers, we stole all of their zone blitzes and didn't run them until we got to the playoffs. And both interceptions that led to our win against the Steelers were on zone blitzes,
which you brought in. Yeah, that's
so those two things stuck out. And then of course Leon Lett, dropping the ball going into the end zone, or else that would have been the biggest point total separation in history.
Yeah, but hey, at least you got the memory. As long as you landed on the right side of the game, you still got the memory too.
Exactly.
Great stuff, Coach. We'll probably talk a little bit more about the Super Bowl next week, and then obviously we'll find out how many more staff members are added.
Very good.
Sounds good. Always good to have you, Coach. Thank you. Campo and Joe podcast right here on 1010XL on Facebook Live. Appreciate all y'all tuning in or listening.